Well, good morning. Here it is. It's Monday morning, and we've gone through the weekend really fast anyway. But today is March, March the 24th, and I truly hope you had a great weekend. As always, I pray that and hope that you were able to spend some time with your family, and maybe some friends, and anyway, just have a wonderful time. Hopefully, maybe resting a little bit, or maybe catching up on things around home. But and I hope you had a great Sunday. Where you were able to worship at the place of your choice, and I know we had a good Sunday at our church. And anyway, now here it is Monday morning, and God has given us the breath to breathe for at least one more day. And I certainly hope and pray that this morning finds you feeling well. Hope it finds you well rested and ready to tackle the opportunities that God has given us here on this Monday morning. This morning I want to share a devotional with you entitled Faithful to God's Will. In 1 Samuel chapter 24, verses 6 and 7, it says, "He said to his men, 'The Lord forbid that I should do this to my Lord the king. I shouldn't attack the Lord's anointed one, for the Lord himself has chosen him.' So David restrained his men and did not let them kill Saul." After he was anointed king of Israel, David's life, reads, like an adventure story. He didn't assume the throne, immediately. In fact, few people knew of his anointing at first. Saul, the acting king, struggled with mental illness. His servant suggested, sending for a musician to play, for the king to help ease his depression and fear. And guess who they chose? The youngest son of Jesse, from the old little town of Bethlehem. When David, wasn't playing therapy music for the king, he'd been anointed to, replace. He was running errands for his father. And David's three older brothers, they had joined Saul's army to fight the Philistines. And one day Jesse, he sent David, to take food to his brothers, on the front line. And there David heard the giant Philistine warrior Goliath challenging, the Israelite army. Now you probably, know what happened next. David, he accepted the challenge. He killed Goliath and he became a hero. Saul promoted David to military commander in addition to his job as court musician. And God blessed David, so that he was successful in everything that he did. It didn't take long for Saul to become jealous. In fact, he tried to kill David by throwing a spear at him, but David escaped. And by sending him on a suicide mission to collect the body parts of 100 Philistines, which David returned with 200 of them, and by throwing another spear, but again, David escaped. Now, David became best friends with Saul's son, Jonathan, and he married Saul's daughter, Michal. But they couldn't protect him from their father's wrath, so David had to flee. Well, in desperation, he took matters into his own hands. He had a momentary lapse of faith, and he tried to hide in the city of Gath, the hometown of Goliath, a place teeming with Philistines. Apparently, David thought he could just walk through the city and not be recognized. But he was a legend in his own time. Everyone knew who David was. He was immediately recognized and then brought before the king. And David realized he was in trouble, so he pretended to be insane, and the ploy worked. Now David, fled to a cave known as Adullam. Some of his soldiers joined him there, and then one day an amazing thing happened. King Saul, who was, hunting David, walked into the cave alone to use the restroom. David and his men were hiding further back in the cave. Now David's men, they saw it as a sign from God that David, should kill Saul. That way David wouldn't have to fear, for his life any longer. But David knew better. He understood that Saul had been God's anointed one, so he refused to harm him. He left that to God. And David, he prioritized God's will even over his own life. Now Jesus, he faced a similar situation. on the night he was arrested, just hours before he would take the weight of the world's sins on himself and endure God's wrath alone. Remember, Jesus prayed. He prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." That was in Matthew chapter 26, verse 39. So he too prioritized God's will, even over his own life. Now, if you're a Christian, people are watching you to see if you prioritize God's will. They are scrutinizing, your every move. You should know that they are not hoping that you will be a godly witness. They're hoping that you'll slip up, so that you will, so they will have something, on which to conveniently hang their doubts and their and beliefs. So, what kind of character do you have? I mean, who are you in private? For all practical purposes, that is the real you, and that's why it's so important that we ask God to help us to guard our hearts, to guard our time, with Him all the time, so that we can be the people that He wants us to be and not what we want to be. So I'll leave you with this question to reflect on this morning. How can you recognize and prioritize God's will in a given situation? And I hope you can reflect on that today, and anyway, something to think about. But anyway, hope you have a wonderful day. Remember, Angie and I, we love you guys, and we're praying for you. And Lord willing, I'll see you tomorrow morning. God bless you.